October 17, 2025. Arizona State Prison Complex, Florence. Richard Kenneth Djerf is about to die. He's 55 now. Gray hair. Quiet. He's had 32 years to think about what he did. And what he did was spend 8 hours torturing a family to death. His last meal arrived at dawn. Double cheeseburger with lettuce and tomato. Onion rings with ketchup. Cherry pie with whipped cream. Pepsi. He ate it all. They asked if he had any last words. He didn't. But a month earlier, he'd written something down. I would prefer that this not be happening, but that is a choice I lost 32 years ago. At 10:40 a.m., the chemicals stop his heart. No one from the Luna family came to watch. September 14th, 1993, 11:45 p.m. Phoenix, Arizona. Albert Luna Jr. pulls into his parents' driveway. He's 23. He's been at his girlfriend's house all day. Something's wrong. He can smell it before he opens the door. Gasoline. He walks inside. The kitchen light is on. His mother is duct taped to a chair. So is his little brother. They're sitting in blood. Their heads are tilted back. Execution-style gunshots. His father is on the floor a few feet away. His skull is caved in. There's a baseball bat nearby. Albert Jr. runs. He doesn't go upstairs. He doesn't check his sister's room. He drives to his girlfriend's house and calls 911. When police arrive, they find Rochelle in her bedroom. She's been raped, stabbed 4 times in the chest. Her throat is cut so deep it nearly decapitated her. Damien Luna was 5 years old. He watched his father die, trying to save him. Officer Ernie Britz worked that scene. He'd later say it was the worst thing he ever saw in his career. One of his colleagues quit the force years later because of it. This is where the story ends. But it didn't start here. It started 8 months earlier with a stolen TV and a man who couldn't let it go. To understand how 4 people died over a burglary, you need to know who Richard Djerf was and what he was capable of. Richard Kenneth Djerf was born November 6, 1969 in Phoenix. Nobody really knew him. That's the thing people said later. He was just there. He worked nights as a custodian at Safeway. Quiet guy. Kept to himself. The kind of person you'd pass in the aisle and forget about 10 seconds later. He lived alone. No real friends. No girlfriend at the time. Just him and his apartment and his stuff. And he really cared about his stuff. January 1993. Someone broke into Djerf's apartment. Stole his TV, his VCR, his stereo, a car alarm, and an AK-47 assault rifle. He knew who did it. Or he thought he did. Albert Luna Jr. had been his roommate briefly. They'd worked together at Safeway. Djerf was sure Luna took his things. So he did what you're supposed to do. He reported it to the Glendale police. They didn't do anything. No arrest. No investigation. Nothing. And that's when something broke inside Richard Djerf. Here's what prosecutors would later figure out about his thinking. He didn't just want his stuff back. He wanted revenge. Not just on Albert Luna Jr., on his whole family. It wasn't rational. But for Djerf, it made perfect sense. You steal from me. Fine. I'll take everything from you. For 8 months, he planned it. Bought supplies. Thought through every detail. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was methodical. He bought a 9mm Beretta, latex gloves, handcuffs, red fuse cord for starting fires, a knife. He rehearsed it in his head over and over. The Glendale police did nothing, so Richard Djerf decided to be judge, jury, and executioner himself. Years later, after he'd been on death row for decades, doctors diagnosed him with autism spectrum disorder and brain damage. In his final prison messages, Djerf would reflect on this. He wrote that maybe these conditions explained some of his actions. The obsession. The inability to let it go. The social isolation that left him with no one to talk him down. But he also wrote something else. It doesn't excuse what I did. He was right about that. Lots of people have autism. Lots of people have brain damage. They don't spend 8 hours torturing families to death. On September 14, 1993, Richard Djerf woke up and decided it was time. He packed his supplies. He bought artificial flowers in a vase as a prop to get the door open. And he drove to the Luna family home. Albert Luna Jr. wasn't going to be there. Djerf probably knew that. He worked days now. But his family would be home. His mother, Patricia. His father, Albert Sr., his sister, Rochelle. His little brother, Damien. Djerf didn't care. In his mind, they were all guilty by association. This wasn't about getting his TV back anymore. This was about making someone hurt the way he hurt. And he was about to succeed beyond measure. September 14th, 1993, 10 a.m. Richard Djerf knocked on the Luna family's door, carrying a vase of artificial flowers. Patricia Luna answered. She was 42, a wife, a mother of 4. Just a normal Tuesday morning. Djerf pointed a 9mm Beretta at her face and forced his way inside. He came prepared. Latex gloves, handcuffs, rope, black electrical tape, red fuse cord, a knife, and that gun. This wasn't a robbery that went wrong. This was planned. Every piece of it. Patricia's youngest son, Damien, was home. He was 5 years old. Djerf took them both to the master bedroom. He tied Patricia up with rope and electrical tape. Damien was too young to be a threat, so at first, Djerf left him unbound. Then he held the gun to the child's head and told Patricia to start loading things into the family car. 2 VCRs, a telephone, a caller ID box, a stereo CD player, 4 watches, loose change, a money clip with food stamps, symbolic theft, taking from them what had been taken from him. But that wasn't enough. He brought them to the kitchen, tied both of them to chairs, gagged them with tape, and then he started asking Patricia questions. Do you want to die first, or should your son die first? He asked her where Albert Jr. was, his real target, the one he blamed for the burglary. Albert Jr. wasn't home. He was at work. So Djerf waited. For hours, Patricia and Damien sat in those chairs, terrified. A 5-year-old watching his mother struggle. A mother unable to comfort her child. 3 p.m. Rochelle Luna came home from school. She was 18, just starting her adult life. Djerf intercepted her at the door, forced her into her bedroom at gunpoint. He gagged her with tissue paper and tape, tied her wrists to the bed, cut her clothes off with his knife. Then he raped her. When he was done, he stabbed her 4 times in the chest. 2 of those wounds were fatal on their own. Then he slit her throat, cutting so deep he severed her jugular vein. She was still alive when he stabbed her in the back of the head. Multiple shallow wounds. After she died, he stabbed her once more in the temple. Medical examiners would later find that Rochelle aspirated vomit behind her gag. She was choking as she bled out. Djerf walked back to the kitchen. He told Patricia he just raped and killed her daughter. Imagine that. Tied to a chair. Unable to scream or move. Hearing that your child is dead in the next room. 4 p.m. Albert Luna Sr. came home from work. He was 47. A hard-working man. He'd spent the day providing for his family. Djerf ambushed him, forced him at gunpoint to crawl to the master bedroom. He handcuffed Albert face down on the bed. Then he picked up an aluminum baseball bat and started swinging. 3 massive blows to the head. Blood splattered across the walls, the bed, everything. Djerf thought he was dead. He removed the handcuffs, taped Albert's hands and wrists, and left him there. Then he went back to Patricia and told her that her husband was dead too. But Albert Sr. wasn't dead. He regained consciousness, freed himself, found a pocket knife in his pants, and he charged into the kitchen to save his family. He stabbed Djerf, got him good. Serious wounds. But Djerf had a gun. The 2 men fought. Djerf stabbed Albert through the arm and into his torso. Then he fired 6 shots. Albert Luna Sr. fell at the feet of his wife and youngest son. Damien watched his father die, trying to save him. Before this, Djerf had already tried to kill Damien twice. He tried to snap the child's neck by twisting his head. It didn't work. Then he stripped wires from a kitchen lamp cord and taped them to Damien's calf. An electrocution attempt. Police would later find the cord unplugged at the scene. It never worked. A 5-year-old survived 2 murder attempts before his father was shot to death in front of him. With Albert Sr. dead and no one left to fight back, Djerf turned to Patricia one last time. Do you want to watch your kid die? Or do you want your kid to watch you die? Then he shot them both in the head at close range. Execution style. Patricia was still taped to her chair. So was Damien. Djerf wasn't done. He doused the bodies with gasoline, poured it on the floor, soaked the house. He lit a fuse cord, but then he looked outside and saw children playing in the yard next door. He extinguished it, turned on the stove burners instead, put a pizza box and rag on top of them. A half-hearted arson attempt that failed. At 6 p.m., 8 hours after he'd arrived, Richard Djerf drove away in the Luna family car. He went to his apartment. His girlfriend, Emily Boswell, was there. He told her 2 men had tried to rob him and stabbed him. She took him to the hospital for his wounds. The next day, September 15th, he told her the truth. He described the murders as really awesome. He said, "You should have been there." Over the next few days, he bragged to his friends Travis Webb and Daniel Greenwood. He was proud of what he'd done. 11:45 p.m. September 14th, 1993. Albert Luna Jr. came home. He smelled the gasoline first. Then he saw his family. His mother and little brother taped to chairs in pools of blood. His father on the floor with his skull crushed. He didn't check his sister's room. He just ran. First responders arrived to one of the worst crime scenes they'd ever worked. Officer Ernie Britz would later say he'd never seen anything like it. One of his colleagues quit the police force years later because the images never left him. But the Luna family was so much more than how they died. Albert Luna Sr. was a provider, a father who worked hard so his kids could have what they needed. He was 47 years old. He had a steady job, a home, a family he loved. In his final moments, wounded and bleeding from his head, he didn't run. He fought back. He tried to save his wife and son. That's who he was. Patricia Luna was 42, a devoted mother, the heart of the home. She spent 8 hours tied to a chair watching her family die, knowing her daughter had been raped and murdered, watching her husband bleed out, unable to protect her youngest child. The mental torture she endured before Djerf finally shot her is unimaginable. Rochelle Luna was 18. She'd just come home from school that day. She had her whole life ahead of her. She was on the edge of adulthood, figuring out who she wanted to be. She was brutally assaulted and killed in her own bedroom. Damien Luna was 5 years old. He liked playing. He liked his family. He was a kid. He watched his father die, trying to save him. He survived 2 murder attempts before Djerf shot him in the head. 5 years old. Albert Luna Jr. was at work when it happened. He's the only one who survived. He came home to find his entire family slaughtered. His mother, his father, his sister, his little brother, gone. And one day, over a stolen TV and an obsessive grudge, the Luna family was just living their lives, going to work, going to school, being home on a Tuesday. And Richard Djerf decided they all deserved to die because he suspected Albert Jr. stole from him 8 months earlier. For innocent people. 8 hours of torture. For revenge. As the Luna family's loved ones tried to process what had happened, detectives were already building the case. And Richard Djerf's own bragging was about to become his downfall. September 14th, 1993, 11:45 p.m. Police arrived at the Luna home and immediately knew this was different. Officer Ernie Britz was one of the first responders. He'd later describe it as one of the most horrific crime scenes he'd ever encountered. Years later, one of his colleagues would quit the force because the images never left him. 4 bodies. A mother and child taped to kitchen chairs. A father with his skull crushed. A teenage girl in her bedroom. Gasoline everywhere. Failed arson attempt. This wasn't a robbery gone wrong. This was methodical, planned, personal. The crime scene told investigators several things immediately. Someone had spent hours in this house. The level of violence, the torture, the binding. This took time. Whoever did this knew the family, or at least knew Albert Luna Jr. And whoever did this was both organized and sloppy. They planned it carefully, but left evidence everywhere. September 15th, 1993. Richard Djerf showed up at a hospital with stab wounds. He told staff that 2 men had tried to rob him. He fought them off, but they got him good. The hospital treated him and let him go. But that same day, Djerf made a critical mistake. He told his girlfriend, Emily Boswell, the truth. He described the murders in detail, told her it was really awesome, said she should have been there. Boswell was horrified, but she didn't report it right away. Over the next few days, Djerf kept talking. He bragged to his friends Travis Webb and Daniel Greenwood, told them what he'd done, how he'd gotten revenge on the Luna family. Someone finally called the police. September 18th, 1993. 4 days after the murders, detectives arrested Richard Djerf at his apartment. When they searched his place, they found everything. The 9mm Beretta used in the shootings, the knife used to stab Albert Sr. and Rochelle, stolen items from the Luna home, the VCRs, watches, caller ID box, a handcuff key, latex gloves, a newspaper clipping about the killings. They also searched his car and a motel room he'd rented. More evidence. More stolen property. Djerf had kept it all. Like trophies. The forensic evidence was overwhelming. Ballistics matched the gun to the bullets recovered from the victims. Blood evidence tied him to the scene. The stolen items proved he was there. And then there were the confessions. To his girlfriend. To his friends. Djerf had essentially solved the case for them. October 29th, 1993. Djerf was in custody without bond, awaiting trial. He tried to kill himself by slashing his wrists with a makeshift shank. It didn't work. Guards found him and got him medical attention. He'd have to face trial after all. Detectives didn't need to work that hard to build this case. Richard Djerf had left a trail. He'd bragged. He'd kept evidence. He told people what he'd done. The arrest came fast. The evidence was solid. Now it was up to prosecutors to make sure justice actually happened. On August 16, 1995, Richard Djerf would sit in a courtroom and face what he'd done. The question wasn't whether he was guilty. The question was whether he'd die for it. August 16, 1995. Richard Djerf stood in front of Judge Michael Ryan and did something unusual. He insisted on representing himself. Judge Ryan warned him this was a terrible idea. This was a death penalty case. For counts of first-degree murder, you need a lawyer. Djerf didn't care. He invoked Rule 11, which gave him the right to self-representation. So the court let him. Here's the thing about representing yourself in a capital murder trial. You're almost guaranteeing your own death sentence. Djerf knew this. He did it anyway. Maybe he thought he was smarter than everyone else. Maybe he just didn't care anymore. Either way, he pleaded guilty to all 4 counts of first-degree murder. The prosecution dropped the other charges as part of the plea deal. Sexual assault, kidnapping, burglary, arson. But the 4 murder charges stuck. And that was enough. The sentencing phase came next. This is where the jury decides life in prison or death. Prosecutors presented the evidence. Not to prove guilt anymore, that was already settled. But to show why death was the appropriate punishment. Medical examiners took the stand. They detailed every injury, every wound, the timeline of suffering. Patricia Luna, bound and gagged, forced to watch her family die over 8 hours. Rochelle Luna, raped and stabbed, choking on vomit behind her gag. Albert Luna Sr., bludgeoned, then shot 6 times while trying to save his family. Damien Luna, 5 years old, surviving 2 murder attempts before being executed. The jury heard all of it. The defense, which was Djerf himself, had nothing. No mitigating factors. No childhood trauma excuse. No mental illness defense. Just Richard Djerf standing there, having pleaded guilty, offering no real reason why his life should be spared. May 22, 1996. Judge Ryan sentenced Richard Djerf to death on all 4 counts. The judge's words were clear. Djerf had relished these killings. He'd planned them meticulously. He'd tortured a family for 8 hours. He bragged about it afterward. There were aggravating factors. Pecuniary gain, he stole from them. especially heinous, cruel, or depraved manner of killing, multiple homicides, a child victim, no mitigating factors that mattered, death, 4 times over. Djerf scoffed when he heard the sentence. They can only kill me once. That was his reaction. Not remorse, not fear, just a dark joke about the redundancy of 4 death sentences. The Arizona Supreme Court would later affirm the sentence in 1998. They found the evidence overwhelming, the aggravating factors clear, the sentence appropriate. The U.S. Supreme Court declined to review it. Djerf's case would intersect with some major death penalty rulings over the years. Ring v. Arizona in 2002 required juries to decide death sentences, not judges. But T0rturing v. Summerlin in 2004 clarified that this ruling didn't apply retroactively. So, Djerf's sentence stood. Federal appeals dragged on until 2021. Every argument exhausted. Every avenue closed. In 2025, after Aaron Gunch's execution, Arizona issued a warrant for Richard Djerf. After 32 years on death row, it was finally time. Richard Djerf was sent to death row in 1996. First at Tucson State Prison, later transferred to Florence. He would spend 32 years there, waiting. The appeals started immediately. They always do in death penalty cases. 1998, the Arizona Supreme Court affirmed his sentence. They reviewed the case and found it straightforward. For aggravating factors, pecuniary gain, he stole from them, especially heinous, cruel, or depraved manner, multiple homicides, a child victim, no mitigating factors that outweighed those. The sentence stood. The U.S. Supreme Court declined to review it. 2002, Ring v. Arizona. This was a landmark Supreme Court case that changed how death sentences work. It said juries have to decide death sentences, not judges. Djerf's case had been decided by a judge, Judge Ryan. So there was hope. Maybe his sentence would be overturned. 2004, T0rturing v. Summerlin. The Supreme Court clarified that Ring v. Arizona doesn't apply retroactively. So, Djerf's sentence stood. Again, federal appeals dragged on for years, decades. Every legal avenue explored, every argument made. By 2021, they were all exhausted. In 2025, after Arizona executed Aaron Gunch's, they issued a warrant for Richard Djerf. After 32 years, it was finally time. So what did Djerf do for 32 years? He read a lot. Jack Reacher novels were his favorite. Thrillers, action, escapism. He listened to the radio, watched TV when he could. He ate commissary junk food, chips, candy, soda. He refused most prison meals, said they weren't worth eating. At some point during those years, doctors diagnosed him with autism spectrum disorder and brain damage. Djerf reflected on this in letters. He wrote that maybe these conditions explained some of his behavior. The obsessive thinking, the social isolation, the inability to let go of the burglary. But he always added, it doesn't excuse what I did. He was right. In his final weeks, Djerf had access to a prison tablet. He sent messages to people on the outside. He described his routine. Radio in the morning, books, TV shows, outdoor time when allowed. He said the staff treated him kindly. He appreciated that. He talked about religion. Said he didn't believe in an afterlife. Thought when he died, that would be it. Nothing. September 2025. Djerf made a public statement. He said he wouldn't seek clemency. He wouldn't fight the execution anymore. He apologized, publicly, for what he'd done to the Luna family. Someone from the Luna family sent him an email. He replied with more apologies. Said he hoped they could find peace. He wrote something else, too. They are who should be remembered, not me. Albert Sr., Patricia, Rochelle, Damien. Those were the names that mattered. Djerf also said he believed the death penalty was appropriate for his case. Not all cases, but his. Yes. He'd spent 32 years thinking about what he'd done, and he'd come to accept that he deserved to die for it. October 16, 2025. All appeals exhausted. No stays of execution. No last-minute reprieves. Djerf was moved to a holding cell near the execution chamber. 24 hours left. His last meal request: double cheeseburger with lettuce and tomato, onion rings with ketchup, cherry pie with whipped cream, Pepsi. He ate it all. They asked if he wanted to prepare any last words. He declined. He'd already said what he needed to say in September. The public apology. The acknowledgement of guilt. He had nothing left to add. No one from the Luna family came to witness the execution. Albert Luna Jr., the only survivor, declined to attend. After 32 years, he didn't need to watch Djerf die to find closure. In his final hours, Djerf was reportedly calm, not defiant, not terrified, just resigned. He'd written earlier, "I would prefer that this not be happening, but that is a choice I lost 32 years ago." He understood the trade he'd made. 8 hours of torture and murder in exchange for 32 years on death row, followed by death. October 17, 2025. Morning. Guards came for him. It was time. October 17, 2025. 10 a.m. Guards came for Richard Djerf. He'd been in a holding cell next to the execution chamber, waiting. They walked him the final steps. He was calm, resigned. At 55 years old, after 32 years on death row, this was the end. The execution chamber at Arizona State Prison Complex in Florence is a small room. There's a gurney in the center. Medical equipment. Viewing windows on either side. On one side, space for the victim's family. On the other side, space for the defendant's family. No one from the Luna family came. Albert Luna Jr. declined to attend. No one from Djerf's family came either. Just prison officials, medical staff, a few media witnesses required by law. They strapped Djerf to the gurney, arms extended, IVs inserted into both arms. The process was clinical, professional. The technicians knew what they were doing. Djerf didn't resist, didn't fight, just lay there. The warden asked if he had any final words. Djerf declined. He'd already said what he needed to say in September. The public apology. The acknowledgement of guilt. There was nothing left. 10:20 a.m. The lethal injection protocol began. Arizona uses a 3-drug combination. First drug, midazolam, a sedative, renders the person unconscious. Second drug, a paralytic, stops breathing. Third drug, potassium chloride, stops the heart. The first drug began flowing. Within seconds, Djerf appeared to lose consciousness. His eyes closed. His body relaxed. The next 2 drugs followed. His breathing stopped. Then his heart. 10:40 a.m. The attending physician checked for vital signs. None. Richard Kenneth Djerf was pronounced dead. He was 55 years old. He'd spent 32 years, 4 months, and 25 days on death row. The curtains closed. Outside the prison, reporters waited for statements. Maricopa County Attorney Rachel Mitchell, "This was pure evil. Justice has been served for the Luna family." Arizona Attorney General Chris Mays, "Today brings closure for the loved ones of Albert, Patricia, Rochelle, and Damien Luna." But closure is a complicated word. Albert Luna Jr. didn't attend the execution. He declined all media requests for comment. After 32 years, he had nothing to say. His entire family was murdered on September 14, 1993. His mother, his father, his sister, his little brother. No execution was going to bring them back. Djerf's body was claimed by relatives. No public funeral. No announcement of where he was buried. He wanted to be forgotten. He'd said so himself in September. "They are who should be remembered, not me." So what do we take from this? Richard Djerf spent 8 hours torturing a family to death over a stolen TV. He bound Patricia Luna to a chair and made her watch her daughter get raped and murdered. Made her listen as her husband was beaten to death. Made her watch her 5-year-old son survive 2 murder attempts before executing them both. The cruelty is almost incomprehensible. And yet, Djerf spent 32 years thinking about what he'd done. He was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder and brain damage. Maybe that explains some of his behavior. The obsessive thinking, the social isolation, But he never used it as an excuse. He said repeatedly, "It doesn't excuse what I did." He was right. Does execution equal justice? For some people, yes. Richard Djerf committed one of the most brutal crimes in Arizona history. For innocent people died because he couldn't let go of a grudge. He deserved the death penalty. Even he thought so. But does his death bring back Albert Sr., Patricia, Rochelle, Damien? No. Does it erase Albert Luna Jr.'s trauma? The image of his family, taped to chairs and pools of blood? No. Damien Luna would have been 37 years old in 2025. But he'll always be 5. Rochelle Luna would have been 50. She might have had kids, a career, a life, but she'll always be 18. Patricia and Albert Sr. never got to see their grandchildren, never got to retire, never got to grow old together. Richard Djerf took all of that in 8 hours, and the state of Arizona took his life in 20 minutes. Is that justice? Revenge? Both? Neither. That's for you to decide. What we know for certain: 5 people died because of what happened on September 14, 1993. 4 innocent victims. 1 guilty killer. 5 families destroyed. Countless lives touched by violence. And 32 years later, the cycle finally ended. Albert Luna Sr., Patricia Luna, Rochelle Luna, Damien Luna. Those are the names that matter. Remember them, not the man who killed them.